All right, that is our intro. I'm Scott Reed here with Duck Sports Authority. Tonight I am joined by special guest Cody Cameron. He is my go-to guy to anything Arizona that I like to talk about and has tons and tons of knowledge. I think we met in 2019, I believe, at the Publishers Conference, right, Cody?
That was right. 5-star. That was a 5-star challenge in Atlanta, Georgia, downtown Atlanta. And you and I and AJ and Ralph, man, we got together on one of those publishers night and just talk football, talk life, and became good friends, man. So it's good to a first ever appearance on the Flog Talk show with you. So I'm
Well,
excited.
you know what? It's only like the sixth episode, so it's not like there's been a lot here. It's one of those things that when I first took over, I knew I wanted to do, but I don't like to do anything halfway, and I didn't want to just jump in and do it too bad. So I had to try to at least get some idea what I wanted to do with it and how I wanted to kind of structure it and make it look. And the first episode was a little bit weak, but it was also one that came out of the blue because I got a call from Marcus Harper's people that said, "Hey, we'd love to do an interview with you." And I had to go through the machinations of getting permission from the university. But then I thought, how am I going to do an interview without any way to interview him other than over the phone? And so I said, I wanted to do this. We'll just throw it together. We'll make it work. We'll figure it out and kind of go from there. So this is fake, but it's awesome because it's better than my background, which is my wine fridge. I don't think people really want to see that too much in this. So the first thing, hey, I want to talk about, and that is Cooper Perry. I think that kid, as much as everybody talks about the Oregon wide receiver recruiting class, they keep talking about Corey Moore and Dallas Wilson with good reason. Those guys are exceptional athletes, so talented that it's really hard to talk about in a short time. But I think we undervalue Cooper Perry and just how good that guy is. I've seen him on tape. You've seen him in person. So talk to me about what makes him such an underrated prospect, even though he's a pretty high-rated prospect as it is.
Yeah, to me, he's so versatile. And Cooper is a player with 4 years experience at the varsity level, playing in a 5A region. So in the state of Arizona, 6A being the top. And it really has to do with school population and then just kind of your track record the last X amount of years. He plays in 5A, so right under that, but they're in the best region in that 5A, going up against numerous teams with Division I talent. So it's not like, hey, this is a kid who's not playing against anybody, right? So yeah, he's got all the stats, he's got everything. But when you look at him as a high school football player, just as a player diagnosing that, he is extremely versatile. You can line up wide, you can line up in a slot. The offense and their offensive coaches do a really good job of utilizing him in terms of motioning it in him to create a trips bunch set. And with that, it's his understanding of route running and positioning and finding an open space in a zone concept, right? So when you look at high school football, right, any kid can run a 9 route, any kid can run a hitch and go and look good on film. You need about 10 to 20 plays on there. And I could put 10 to 20 of that together if I'm a superb athlete and I'm just better than the opposing defensive back. Cooper has already elevated his game, and he's really took that step last year, but then just doubled that this year. I've watched him twice in person this year, and just understanding how to get on a defensive back's heels, create that separation. He's always been one of the best athletes on the field. He's already, like, his body control, his athleticism, all of that has always been there, Scott, but he's really done a great job at elevating his game. So you're exactly correct. I think when you talk about Cooper Perry and you talk about the receivers that have come out of the state of Arizona the last X amount of years, his name is at one of the top because of all those other things he did. When you look at a collegiate prospect, you want him, sometimes you got to teach that because he hasn't had to do that necessarily in high school. Cooper's doing it right now, and it's really cool to see.
And I think, Cody, that's the thing that we talk about receivers, and a lot of people think that it's all about just being fast or little things. The little things are bigger than that. It's the technique. It's the release moves, and it's not just whether he does certain types of moves. There's multiple different release moves we don't want to go through and talk about all the technical details about receivers, but release moves, how you use your hands, how you create separation without extending your arms. And everybody gets a little bit of push, right? But you don't want to extend your arms, and you got to figure out how to do that in different ways, different moves that are technique. And I think people lose that and think that a guy that's fast can just get open. And we've seen plenty of fast receivers that can't get open. And it's not because they're not fast, it's because they don't have the technique down. And I think that's the thing that you're talking about with Cooper is he doesn't just have speed, he has technique. And when you can combine both of those things into a smart football player that understands defenses, understands leverage, understands what the offense is trying to do with his leverage and the different play calls, that creates a guy that is ready to make an impact very early, as opposed to somebody who needs 2 or 3 years before he can get on the field. And I think that's what I see. And I think if there's a reason to be excited when your third best receiver in your recruiting class is Cooper Perry. That's a darn good recruiting class, right?
Yes, it really is. And go on to your point again, because no matter what you do, it's going to be a massive jump going from the high school level to the collegiate level, especially when you're talking about Oregon, who's a national powerhouse right now, right? And the teams you play, especially in the Big Ten, they got really, really physical defensive backs. And I kind of take that to the Ohio State game, right? Watching those defensive backs who it kills me to say it, man, but they absolutely shredded one of our alums in Denzel Burke, who's a Saguaro Scottsdale product, man. And God, it was nothing but, day one NFL draft analysis on him. And then after that game, I was like, kind of pulled down the curtain. So it was kind of interesting because I remember watching him, which seemed like yesterday, only a couple of years ago in our state, and Oregon receivers made him look foolish. But it's the physicality, right? And so high school receivers, there's a lot of times of defensive backs lining up on Cooper that are naturally 10 or a player like Cooper going to line up 10 to 15 yards back, just dropping a cover 3, open up their hips and pray that they don't get beat deep, right? And how can you work on your release and your first step and the wiggle off the snap if you see that every single week? It's impossible. You could try to replicate it at practice, but for the most part, like, you need those game reps to do that. That's why it's such a huge jump going from the high school ranks to this. What I've seen that defenses do in the state of Arizona here is they're bracketing. It's almost like a box and one basketball style. And you see that with a lot of high school best players. But I love seeing that with our top receivers, like Cooper Perry, because, hey, it forces him to work off the snap. It forces him to not telegraph his route. It forces him to work on a jab in and then quick release outside or vice versa, right? And like you said, with your hands, separating – the little forearm and all that. The athletes know how to do that when they're 10 years old. But creating separation with your feet, right? That's a huge elevation in the receiving game. And he does a great job. Plus hand fighting off the snap as well. Just working in inside releases with that. He is constantly a student in the game doing that. He has to do that because so many teams are bracketing him. So many teams are going cover 5 man up front, shadowing and underneath with the safety of the top. So I think that's really, he's elevated his game because of that, and he has taken that step.
The other thing I see, obviously, he's really good at 50-50 balls. And not a ton of them are going to happen with him, but he's not going to lose a lot of those battles. Now, maybe when he gets to the next level, he's not going to win as many. Those battles are going to be tougher because you're talking now the best of the best defensive backs. And if you get in a 50-50 battle, they're going to win 50-50, but he's doing a really good job in strength part of getting to the ball and making the play at the high point. I really like that on film with him.
He's a big kid. It's like you guys, some of you guys might have seen him because he's been at Eugene about 17,000 times in his high school career already. But he's a big kid. This isn't a guy that we're talking like sitting, lists himself at 6 foot, but he's really 5'9" or 5'10", right? Like he's every bit 6'1", 6'2", 185 frame that can get to 200 pounds, plays physical. He's running through would-be tacklers. So when you talk about those 50-50 balls with his frame, does a great job of sealing, does a great job of utilizing that frame to box out would-be safeties, kind of getting inside release, and he's going to go on a deep dig or a post, and he's catching the ball at his highest point, not worried because he's usually the bigger player. 100% correct. The size and the speed and the physicality of the defensive backs are obviously going to be bigger, but to see that and that frame and that speed translate with that frame, it's just like, it's all pluses. And there's a reason why Oregon immediately was like, that's the guy. That's who we want in this class.
He is. And I wouldn't be surprised if he rose even a little bit more in final rivals rankings when they come out, just because he's having a stellar senior season, and there's no doubt that he is an elite wide receiver at the next level over time. So let's move on, because we could talk about Cooper Perry all night, I think, and we'd both be excited about it because that's just one of those guys we like. Let's move on. We'll talk about kind of 2026 recruiting in Arizona. There's a few elite guys, I think, that Oregon offered pretty early. I know they offered Bastian Vondenbash back in January of 23, I believe. Same with Dalen Sharper, I believe. They offered both of those guys really early in the process. Let's talk about the 2026 class and some of those two in specific, and then maybe some of the guys that I don't know about in Arizona.
Yeah, so both those kids are on the same high school, Brophy Prep. It's located pretty much centralized Phoenix. It's a loaded team, and it's kind of funny because here is Arizona is a mecca of former NFL players finding their retirement home. We have the best weather in the country, about 7 to 8 months out of the year. Very good real estate. I mean, it's just skyrocketed like the rest of the state the last couple of years, but for the most part, very, very nice real estate. And so that team is full of NFL kids. Vanden Bosch's their dad played for the Cardinals. He's a strength and conditioning coach at Brophy, also one of the coaches on staff. Their head football coach, Jason Jewell, longtime collegiate coach, especially at the JUCO ranks, also did a stint of being a recruiting analyst for another network. This rival, so we're not going to say it, but understanding multiple things. One, collegiately, the recruiting ranks. So he does a great job of not just coaching those kids, but also his phone is like 2,000 contacts of current coaches. I mean, what a huge thing to have it and to market your program. So what does this all mean, right? These kids are really well coached. Me and you spoke off air, and heck, you said that without knowing a single one of those coaches. But the school's got the Vanden Bosch twins, but Bastion's a linebacker, and he's a monster, man. He is. I remember when he was a freshman coming in, and 14 years old, but parallel squatting close to 400 pounds at 14, and just the way he attacks the weight room. Everything they do there is directed for college lifting, and they wake up. And Scott, they practice at 4:45 a.m. and they're instilling these habits into these kids. And yeah, you might say, well, it kind of ruined the high school. Your high school career and all this, the high school experience. Now these kids live and breathe football, and they're tremendous students as well. Bastion's a monster. Dalen Sharper, he has been one of the most impressive jumps from his sophomore to junior year. Huge frame, 6'4", 200 pounds, but just growing into his body. Last year as a sophomore, I think it was not just so confidence. He just didn't have the reps, right? And I didn't have the reps, didn't have the experience. And also growing into his frame so quickly, it just kind of like, I don't know, he played like a sophomore, Now it's like things are clicking, and they're clicking. Brophy plays in 6A. They play the best competition in the state of Arizona, and he is dominating. I don't look at the stats or any of this stuff. They have so many weapons. Play for play, what I love about Dalen Sharper is physicality. His physicality when he doesn't get the ball. He's a tremendous perimeter blocker. He's always giving max effort. Big kid, big frame, and things are starting to click. That jump he's going to take next year too, after all the experience he gets from this year, he's going to be really, really special. And here's another name I'm going to give you. He's already been to Eugene at least once or twice. Oregon's high on him. Outside linebacker, edge rusher from Liberty High School, which is in the West Valley, Hudson Dunn. Hudson Dunn is just one of those players. He's not the biggest kid, especially if you kind of look at outside box guys sitting at about 200 pounds right now. He is so physical and violent. Reminds me just a little bit. It's not the same position, but he reminds me of Brandon Buckner in terms of his tackling. Buck obviously didn't make it work at Oregon, but he was one of our Arizona kids that went up there to University of Oregon. Hudson is a little bit more lateral athleticism, but he's a tremendous tackler. One of the best form tacklers that I've seen in Arizona the last 7 years, but he can come off the edge. He can play a true force to flat outside linebacker. He's really, really, really smart kid, and he's getting better. I'm sure wherever he goes, he's going to get to 225, 230, but very, very violent tackler. So there's 3 names for you in that 2026 class.
Nice. Anybody? 2027 is a little bit off. I know we're starting to already think about it though, because 2026 class, I got several people already on the hook, and they're looking at a lot of different players. 2027 is far ahead for me, so I don't look too far ahead. I don't know if there's somebody coming up though that might be catching your eye in 2027 class.
Well, I was at Oregon, and that was June of this year for one of their last camp dates. And we had a tackle there out of the 2027 class named Jake Hildebrand, 6'6", 280, plays at Basha High School, one of our powerhouse programs in Chandler, Arizona. And they offered him right after that camp. It was a really cool moment. I had just got off the plane, took the Uber to the camp because it was my first time in Eugene, first time seeing the facilities. I met Coach Lanning and most of the staff when they were down here for the Fiesta Bowl last year. And it was kind of like, hey, come through. It was Demo, actually, and Demo left right after. But he was like, hey, anytime you want. And then I hit up one of their player personnel, so like, anyway, come through. But I get off the plane, get on there, and they offered Jake Hildebrand. He already, as a sophomore, has started every single game in his high school career. And I keep using this, but it's something you always see, right? Kids that big, they don't move very well. happens all the time, right? A 6'6" kid at 14, 15 years old usually is like a deer in the headlights. Not this kid. This kid's already grown into his frame, moves really, really well, gets to the second level efficiently, and the violence is there. He's going to be a 100 offer kid. He's got like 50 offers already. Every school in the country is going to offer this kid. He loves Oregon, loves them. And why not? They want athletic big tackles. Jake Hildebrand checks all those marks. He's nasty. I got to go on the visit with him after the offer and see all the facilities and stuff. And he just, the questions they were asking him and his 15-year-old responses, it was like he was already in the scheme. Like he was asking those questions are really cool. So it's a long time from now, but Jake Hildebrand's a name to watch out for in that 2027 class.
Perfect. Which then leads me to the next part, because obviously Oregon has done really well in Arizona for quite a while now, right? It goes back, I think, to as far back as Devin Allen. It's just been a place that they've done really good at recruiting. What is it about the Oregon program that really appeals to the kids there? And you say they have the best weather in the country 8 out of the 12 months. Well, Oregon might have it the other 4 months. So, but let's talk about kind of why there's so much interest, because it spans multiple coaches. It's not just Dan Lanning that's bringing in people. It was Mario Cristobal, Willie Taggart, even Mark Helfrich was bringing in people from Arizona. What is it about Oregon that kind of appeals to so many kids down there?
So before I went on the visit, I would always say, hey, it's the attraction that Nike has and the way they market their players and they have a great chance of going to the NFL. And like you said, amazing weather for the months that here you can't walk outside, right? That all attracts Arizona kids that naturally want to leave the desert. And then going there and talking to Luke Hago talking to Luke Moga and talking to Elijah Rushing. It was right. Like Luke was coming out of the weight room and he was all excited. It was after, I think it was a Friday lift. They just got done and Dylan Gabriel and all the quarterbacks they got a big beach house and we're going to go to, I don't know, it was Florence, Oregon or Newport, or I think they were going to Newport and they were going to have a quarterback retreat. And I was like, man, Luke, that's amazing. That's awesome. And I see Elijah Rushing behind him. Elijah, how you doing? How's everything going? Oh, school's great. What are you doing? What are you doing this weekend? Same thing. Him, the pass rushers, and I don't know if it's the defense coordinator or defense line coach, might have been both. They got an Airbnb at Cannon Beach, and that was gonna be their next practice the next 5 days. Right? He was so amped to go to Cannon Beach and do these things. And I was like, man, that's amazing. Then I see Kyler Casper and the receivers every weekend are doing something. So the attraction of that, I think when you go to Oregon and you really invest yourself and you buy into everything and how hard you work in there, I think when everything comes together, the family aspect of that and all the extra things and utilizing your backyard, utilizing the beautiful state of Oregon, just going to I was talking to one of the coaches and they have a day where they always go to this Hawaiian place that's a huge supporter of Oregon football, and they have poke bowls and they have traditional Hawaiian food and they look forward to that. I know it sounds cliche and colleges all do this thing, but I think at Oregon, it just means a little bit more. And they really, really, really love the student athlete. And then of course the facilities, Scott, God, how could you not? Like I'm in that visit. I'm like, right. I mean, I'm 5'7", 180 pounds. I'm 29 years old. My back's 80 years old. I'm thinking like, all right, how do I get back in this program? Can I GA? Like, how do I get in this? Right. So I think it's a mixture of, you play when you're playing for the name, like Oregon means so much to you and it's still one of those programs that you can be anywhere in the country and just go, man, I'd love to be a Duck. And there's only still a few teams that are like that, very, very few teams and major FBS football. They're still like that. Oregon is one of those programs and the staff means it. The staff doesn't recruit you and go, hey, you suck. I'm not going to talk to you until you get better, because that happens all the time in major football. It's, hey, give me your best effort, and I'm going to give my best effort to, be your brother, be a role model, do all those things. And I saw that from our young Arizona high school football. They just got to campus like early enrolled like 3 or 4 months ago, and so I think that's an amazing thing that they do. They love you like a family, and then the facilities, everything you ever wanted in your entire life is there for you to succeed and prepare yourself not only for Saturdays, but also above and beyond that.
If you can't see, by the way, the background behind us is the Oregon weight room. As a former powerlifter, I was going to make sure that somehow weights were involved in something. And I love the picture. I changed the tone of it a little bit to kind of soften it so it wasn't quite as bright, just so that it didn't overshadow us. But I love the weight room. I do. You know,
Yep.
we got a tour of the Hatfield Dowling Complex when it was first made. They invited all the media out and showed us a tour before it was public. So it was actually really cool. We saw a lot of little stuff behind. But I think people forget. They hear a lot of stuff about Oregon, and they hear rain, they hear this. Drive around the state, and first you realize that if you're in Eugene, you're an hour from the ocean and an hour from skiing in the mountains.
Yep.
I don't think people know just how quickly you can get to do things. You're an hour from hunting, you're an hour from deep sea fishing. No matter what you like to do, it's actually really close in Oregon. And I think that's something people forget. It's, you know, we take it for granted sometimes we live here. You know, I can get to the coast in an hour, and I take that for granted sometimes to think, man, if I lived in Iowa, would I ever get to see some of the things I get to see? No, I would not. And I try not to, but you know, you get busy and it's daily life, and you get busy and you don't get to do as much as you want to do. And it was both the coaches, by the way, as Coach LaPoy and Coach Tuioti that went with them on the Cannon Beach. They obviously they all went to Haystack Rock, and some of them may not remember the movie, but there's a reason that it's a big thing.
Is that the Goonies thing?
It is. It's part of the Goonies. That's a big thing. My oldest son's been there, and he's taken a wife there just because he wanted to show her around the Goonies part. And so there's a lot of cool stuff there. But I agree, there's just that feel that they're able to sell. And let's not lie, it's not that the facilities are just cool. It's that they help these people go from high school athlete to man, right? And that's a big part of what you have to do at any colleges. You're taking a kid and turning him into a man. And you need a lot of support for that when you're also asking them to practice football and learn the playbook and do all these other things that other students don't necessarily do. And other students work, but it's not the same. It's not the same as playing college, elite level football. I played at a smaller school, and it still took a lot of hours out of my day. And then you had to study it, till midnight, and to get up at 4 a.m. to go do your morning conditioning and to do your film stuff and all those different things that you forget about. Those things, you need support. You need the Jakewell Center, which is where the academic stuff happens. You need the training center to get better and get healthy again so that you're ready to go the following week. You need the nutrition. You need all those things. And Oregon's done a really good job of doing it in a way that isn't just superfluous. It looks like it's sometimes in the locker rooms, but let's also remember that's where they hang out. This is where guys hang out. I remember when I played, I would get after practice, you need that decompress time. And where I played, all I could do was go up the stairs to the behind the basketball court in the small little building and try to decompress. And that's not the same thing. And I had to do it alone. And it's just so much that goes into getting up, amped up, and cooling back down after a game that these facilities are really a part of that. I know it's an arms race, but it's also something that's really critical to helping young men become full-grown men and ready to serve society in a way that I think that's the biggest thing that I took when I talked to these kids about what it is that Lanning sells is they're teaching these young men to serve society in a way that benefits the greater good. And that is something that is important for parents to know. And it's not just lip service. And that's the thing that I get from most people, the parents that I talk to. There's no lip service here going on. It's real. They're really doing these things with these kids. And I think that's appealing. And I think probably some kids don't mind getting out of 110 degrees and being up in Oregon in the summertime, right?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, you go the months where you can't walk outside here, and Eugene, Oregon is amazing. And getting to know Dan, right, in like a 30, 40-minute one-on-one with Dan Lanning in the Fiesta Bowl, he is about as real as it gets. And I appreciate that as a media member. Like, say everything to you straight. And he's a real person, very, very genuine. Coach Kenny Dillingham here is the same way, and that was kind of like a match made in heaven for a very short time in Eugene as well. In terms of recruiting the state of Arizona, Kenny Dillingham is an incredible recruiter. But it's interesting to see both of those personalities, because Kenny is so honest, where he goes, I'm not the jock, I'm not. He goes, I'm the goofball. Like I'm just a silly person. Like I play magic tricks with my ASU players and all this stuff, but it's real. It's not kind of this new era or sometimes old wave, like, you got to prove yourself to me type of thing. Like, these guys are real dudes And like you hit the nail in the coffin, like trying to teach you life lessons that the game of football teaches you that's outside the gridiron, and you become a better person, and you have an opportunity to succeed if football doesn't work out, because for the most of these athletes, football is not going to work out once they're done here. I got to tell you, Scott, my favorite part of all the facilities, everything that I saw, the hundreds of millions of dollars in that place, is the media seats in the media room that are all jacked up. So I was I think Lanning had just left, but Lanning had said, like, they bring in, people to help a lot of their players with press conferences, public speaking and stuff like that, or ways so they get used to it. And one of the defensive line coaches said, "Hey, Cody, go sit down in there." And I'm sitting down and I'm like, "Hey, these chairs need a little bit of work, man. Like I'm kind of folded and crunched back." And he's like, "Yeah, it's on purpose. We try to make our media members feel uncomfortable." So they kind of rapid fire out of there. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Funny story. I actually do not go down to the press conferences because to get down there, you miss the last 6 minutes of the game. And if I'm also trying to write a game story, how do I write a game story and get it up quickly if I'm also trying to
That's right, because you got to walk outside Autzen, walk down, which I'm sure is packed, and get in there.
Yeah, you got to go down to the concourse level, and then they walk you back down to the HBC. Yeah. And so if I had other people writing stories for me, I could do that. I could go down and ask the questions. Yeah. But at the end of the day, most of the questions are benign because most coaches don't answer don't give you a lot of in-depth answers on stuff. They're not going to tell you scheme. They're going to tell you some basics of what you saw. And so I have to decide, do I have time to go and lose, especially in a game like Ohio State? How do you write the last 6 minutes of the game if you're not up somewhere watching them? I guess you could watch it on your phone and take notes, but it's just not the same. So, and we get the press conference up in the press box anyway. So I just kind of take the notes from there as needed, and plus we just have a Dropbox that we get the videos in, and we can transcribe them and go from there. Yeah. It's great to ask questions, I guess, and I liked it when I did it. Yeah. But there's only so much time I have to give to doing it, and I have to focus on where the value is. So I tend to end up not going down there, but that's kind of funny that they do it that way on purpose, because they are definitely not comfortable down there. In fact, in the old days, they were like the old-fashioned chairs that you used to have in office that had metal legs and you sit in. Really uncomfortable. Really uncomfortable. Horrible. But that's okay, because we can be an annoyance sometimes when we're asking stupid questions, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Hey, you got anything else to talk about tonight?
I'm good, man. If you guys see, when your readers here see it, go Niners up there. Diehard Bay Area sports fans. So if you like the Bay Area sports, I got Niners, Giants, Warriors, and rooting against the Dodgers right now tonight. But it's the last statement I had to say is Arizona athletes love playing in Eugene, and there's no secret why the University of Oregon has landed some of our top athletes the last 8 to 10 years.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. And by the way, I'm an A's fan, and I'm very disheartened. You may not have seen this, but both of my older son and my younger son and I, different areas of the country. My older son lives in D.C., younger son lives in Montana. I live here in Portland, and we all flew into Oakland for the final homestand just to watch a game during the final homestand.
You take something away from that stadium? You get part of the seat?
Man, I couldn't take anything away from that. They didn't even have anything in the souvenirs. You couldn't even buy anything anymore. It was awful. No, I did not take a seat because I had to fly home, and I don't think that the airline would have been too happy with me bringing a stadium seat on. Probably wouldn't have got away with it, but we had a good time. It was sad but fun to spend time with them. My wife is a Niners fan. She's from Wairika, so it's in us. I apologize to Seahawks fans watching this. I'm sorry. It's not our fault. All right, Cody, I'm going to let you go, man. It's always great talking to you. We will catch up again. If you get up here, give me a call.
Sounds good. I'll see ya.